Have you ever wondered what would happen if, one day, all the trucks in China disappeared? Well, wonder no more, because that day has come. Not literally, but for all intents and purposes, they might as well have. In a shocking turn of events, China's logistics industry has collapsed, leaving more than 13 million truck drivers without a job and over 800,000 companies declaring bankruptcy. It doesn't take a disaster management analyst to understand that this is a disaster of epic proportions. We're about to dive Mariana Trench deep into the world of Chinese logistics, a world that has been turned on its head in recent years. You see, in recent years, the industry of China's logistics has been in a state of collapse, and the repercussions have been nothing short of absolutely catastrophic. But just how did this happen? Let's take a closer look. First, we have to talk about government policies. To combat pollution and traffic congestion, the Chinese government introduced a series of regulations aimed at reducing the number of heavy-duty trucks on the road. Sounds good in theory, right? Well, not so much in practice. You see, these regulations were enforced with Thanos-like terror, and to say the repercussions weren't fully anticipated would be like saying Patrick Mahomes is a decent quarterback. Then there's the fact that demand has suffered a big hit, with U.S. orders in particular facing a 40% decrease. Because of this, China has been forced to decrease its supply in order to balance supply and demand. Economics, people, and has resulted in companies shutting down factories and truck drivers simply not having anything to transport. Well, China's logistics industry accounts for around 14% of the country's GDP, so the collapse of the industry will undoubtedly have far-reaching effects on the overall economy. Some of the causes of the collapse include government policies aimed at reducing pollution and traffic congestion, which have led to a decrease in the number of trucks allowed on the road, as well as the economic slowdown resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. We get that you're trying to do something good, but does it have to come at the cost of your people? Of course, the shortage of truck drivers has led to an increase in transportation costs, with some estimates suggesting that the cost of transporting goods has increased by up to 30%. Some companies have resorted to using drones or other automated vehicles to transport goods, but these technologies are not yet mature enough to replace human drivers entirely. We know ChatGPT has taken the world by storm, but it would seem machines find spinning words easier than following traffic instructions. The collapse of the logistics industry has also led to a decrease in the availability of goods in some areas, with some products becoming more expensive or even disappearing from store shelves. Like, imagine not being able to buy Nutella. Just imagine that. Well, for starters, 13 million truck drivers have vanished into thin air. Okay, they haven't straight up vanished, but they've lost their jobs. That's right, 13 million, equivalent to the population of New York. And it's not just the drivers themselves who have been affected. The bankruptcy of 800,000 logistics companies has had a ripple effect throughout the industry and beyond. Now, these may just sound like numbers, but imagine waking up and going to your office one day and realizing that not only are the computers, your colleagues, and your boss not there, but that the entire building has just disappeared. This may seem like an exaggeration to you, but this is the harsh reality for over 13 million truck drivers all across China. Li Wei is a 43-year-old who used to transport goods from Shenzhen to Chongqing. Now, when the industry of logistics collapsed, it left Li without a job. As a result, he had to resort to selling his truck, and now he must work as a security guard just to make ends meet. Li's story is just one out of 13 million people that have been affected by the collapse of the trucking industry in China. And what's worse is it goes even beyond just the loss of monetary income. For many truck drivers, their job gave them a sense of purpose and belonging. A lot of these drivers were very proud of the work that they did and had formed close bonds and friendships within the industry. Of course, these truck drivers had to do something about it. They have been rallying and protesting against the government, demanding that they take some sort of action. Some of them have even taken to social media to air their grievances, and it's heartbreaking that they should have to fight so hard just to keep their jobs. As you can see, the collapse of the Chinese logistical industry has left a severe and profound effect on the families of truck drivers. It is important to discuss stories like Li's to humanize the statistics and ensure that whenever you hear something like this, it's not just a number, but real people that are being affected. With such a monumental collapse in the entire industry, to say that the Chinese logistics industry is facing an uncertain future would be the understatement of the century. However, like with most issues, all is not lost. There are some steps that can be taken to at least minimize the effects of this disaster. Of course, the most obvious solution is government intervention. Now, the Chinese government has already taken some steps to help. They have provided financial aid to these struggling companies, as well as hosting training programs to help these jobless truck drivers transition into other fields of work. However, with over 13 million people out of jobs, it remains to be seen how effective these measures will be. Then, the government should look to amend the policies. While it's always nice to have good intentions, sometimes those pesky policies can put a real damper on things. Sure, reducing pollution and traffic congestion are noble goals, but why put the whole industry at risk in the process? There are alternative solutions out there that don't involve sacrificing the logistics industry. The promotion of cleaner fuels or switching to electric vehicles, for example. Now, although we have been focusing on the lives of the truck drivers that have been affected, it's also important to understand that the industry itself is also suffering. As a countermeasure to this, various other steps such as self-driving trucks have been explored to negate the negative impact of drivers not being available. However, this then circles back to the problem of truck drivers not having jobs, as self-driving trucks would mark the end of the livelihoods of these drivers. It's part of a long-standing debate of technology costing human beings their jobs in the name of technological advancement. There have also been some other positive developments in the industry. The Chinese government has announced that it is going to invest $1.74 trillion in the country's infrastructure over the next 5 years, which should help in some sense. One of the main things to remember when studying the collapse of China's logistical industry is that this is not some freak accident. This was to be expected. The trade war between China and the US, as well as the government's strict policies when it comes to debt and risk-taking, has led to the loss of numerous jobs in various industries, and it was only a matter of time before something like this happened. The result of this is that the future of China's logistics industry and economic development in general relies on how well the Chinese government can adapt to these setbacks. Now that they have put policies in place that have resulted in economic loss, the way they move forward will define the Chinese economic situation in the near and distant future. So, the collapse of China's logistics industry has left millions of people's lives in uncertainty and has left the entire industry in shambles. While there is great cause for concern, the Chinese government needs to realize that this is not an impossible mountain to overcome. There are numerous opportunities that have arisen from this economic collapse, and it will be interesting to see how the Chinese government proceeds. What do you think China should do? Do you think it's the government's job to put all those workers back in business, or do you think it's time for the industry to innovate and move past relying on workers to transport their goods? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn notifications on to stay in the loop for new uploads.